Good evening, televiewers. You're welcome to Prime R on my media Prime TV. We are glad to be once again before you to look at what is happening around our country today. It's a day set aside to celebrate the workers across the world. The 1st of May has been celebrated in Cameroon by workers of different corporations and enterprises reflecting on their conditions of work in the past year and looking forward to better working conditions as they move forward. So across Douala, across Yaoundé, all the cities, towns, villages, communities of Cameroon, and I'm sure Africa, workers went out today to reflect and look at how their conditions could be made better. The situation was not different from us out here in Douala, those of us working for the BT Media Group. We have been with our bosses since the morning discussing on the situation of the company and also making some commitment, because in life, when you ask for privileges, those privileges should go with responsibility. So when the employers pledge to make things better, the workers also are expected to tell the employers how determined, how committed they are going to be to move the destiny of companies, corporations, and every other entity forward. We are going to be looking at the situation of workers in Cameroon, precisely Africa in general, with our panelists who are in the house already. Senior Barrister Ashu Emmanuel is here with us. He's been away for some time. He is the National President of the Reform Party. Good evening, Senior Barrister. We're glad to have you back.
Good evening, Mr. Leo. Good evening, esteemed televiewers. Thank you for welcoming me back after the Ramadan break. Let me remind you, I'm a Muslim and I had to take a month's break for the fasting. Well, the topic of the day, it looks very interesting because many people misconstrue what is happening today as a day for celebration. I want to bet that we of the political parties have not received any proposals from any group of workers. So I don't know, it looks like they are all feasting instead of contacting those who can bring about the change to have their conditions bettered. So I think we'll be discussing this. It is not supposed to be a day for feasting. It's supposed to be a day for reflection, a day for putting on the table meaningful change. So anyway, Mr. Leo, good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here again today.
We also are in the company of Tata, Kwawi, and Mbinglo. He is the National President of the Cameroon Movement for Change. We are glad to have you.
Thank you so much. It's once again a great privilege to be here today. Good evening, fellow Cameroonians. Of course, today is Labor Day, 1st of May, a special day set aside for workers. So in this slide, I will be recognizing some personalities in the country who are doing a great job as far as empowering the youth of Cameroon is concerned through creating job opportunities for the youth. This I refer to Honorable Ngala Gerard, CEO of Jerisal. I'm referring to Mr. Kang Quintos, CEO of Lionsgate. Also, Abdul Kanfo Bono, the Lord Mayor of Ndu Council. These are people I recognize. It doesn't mean the list ends here, but definitely they are doing a marvelous job when it comes to empowering the youth of Cameroon, which is what we stand for at this point in time.
Okay, we also in the company of Fabrice Elena, who is the Secretary General of the Popular Action Party. Good evening, Fabrice. We're glad to have you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leo. Good evening to my fellow esteemed co-panelists, Senior Barrister Ashu. Good evening to President Tata, Kwawi, Mbinglo. Good evening to Mr. Ndiwum, Emmanuel. Good evening to you, my brother. Good evening to all the militants of the Popular Action Party nationwide and to all the laborers of Cameroon. And special good evening to all those who are doing their best to make ends meet in this very difficult context of our country, where employment conditions are really very bad and there is no employment security. Our insurance for employees are very weak and we are still struggling to obtain for employees a certain degree of reforms that will make their standard of living to improve. We are here to discuss about these things. I want to recognize all those who are really putting much effort to see that each year when we are talking about Labor Day, we are talking about improvement, we are talking about better standards of living. So thank you very much, Mr. Leo, for having me as your guest. We're hoping to have an engaging and fruitful conversation this evening. Okay.
Mr. Guymellen is also here with us. He is a militant of the CBDM party, but also a political analyst. We're glad to have you with us for the first time on Prima.
Thank you, Mr. Leo. Thank you, fellow Cameroonians watching us. Today we have a very interesting topic. There's side of us to discuss on how to improve the better working condition of the youth that are doing their almost best to see that the economy of this country is moving forward. Many people like this, like Senior Barrister said, that many persons have construed the situation of Labor Days to be a day of feasting, and I think for other countries it was feasting, but when we look at the situation around us and what's going on in our country is the opposite of it, and we're here today to deliberate, to argue on that, and to see how our top government official could improve on working condition of our employees.
Of the workers. Okay, we also in the company of yes, we are in the company of Ndiwum Emmanuel, who is a core member of Cameroon Civil Society. He is here with us to also shed light on what he is experiencing and certainly what he has learned about the conditions of work of Cameroonians across corporations and enterprises. We're glad to have you with us, Mr. Ndiwum.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leo. It's always a pleasure to be on this platform. Good evening to all the special viewers of this special program. I wish to add my voice to that of Senior Barrister Ashu Emmanuel. It is regrettable that in such a day like this one, before getting to this studio, I saw people almost dancing across the street, and I was asking myself many questions. Are they dancing and celebrating the frustrations? Are they dancing and celebrating the achievements in the labor field? You know, one thing that has kept Cameroonians in a very tight corner has been their inability to articulate their suffering to their employers. Because when you go dancing in a day like this one, which was supposed to be a day of stock taking, there is no way you can draw the attention of your employer to actually look into the difficulties that you people are facing. I think the 2 hours right is going to be a very fruitful one, and we're going to dissect the different and the various problems all Cameroonians, including us, have been facing in the labor sector in Cameroon. Once more, I'm glad to be here.
I'll start with you, Senior Barrister Ashu Emmanuel. What would workers in Africa, Cameroon to be particular, be celebrating today?
Well, it is first of all the International Labor Day. It's not limited to Africa.
There's heavy feasting out there.
Like my good friend Mr. Ndiwum just said, we are tempted to ask ourselves whether they are celebrating their frustrations or they're celebrating the government's inability to give them the protection they need against the employers. Because you see, one has to understand the legal framework of what the workers are going through. Labor is organized under 2 sections. You have the workers who are under the labor code and those who are under the administration, the civil service. So those who are under the labor code, since the old labor code was kicked aside, changed, and brought a new one brought in, you see, regrettably, because the previous labor code was very good, it protected the worker. Any person who had his qualification and went to any employer for employment, that employer was bound to employ him on the terms that have been spelled out by the law. But today they tell you that you can employ somebody who has a master's degree or a doctorate degree upon negotiation. I mean, the salary is freely negotiable. Take it as you want. That can, in extreme cases, mean that such a worker can be given a salary of 25 or 50,000 francs. It's a take it or leave it. It can be a take it or leave it, which is not supposed to be the case. These workers are supposed to be protected by the government, as it's enshrined in Article 2 of the Labor Code. The state guarantees to all the citizens the right to a meaningful employment. But when you allow the employer to have the upper hand and the possibility to offer to his worker whatever he pleases, please, it's not good. Then now let's come back to the working conditions. The working conditions. When you go through the labor code, there is nowhere, I repeat, nowhere inside the labor code where you see any prescription on how the working environment has to be. If there is any, let any person correct me. Even in the factories, this is something that is lacking, and which I think ought to be enshrined inside the labor code. You cannot have people working in industries, dangerous industries, except for companies like Sonara, who go the extra mile to employ safety and security specialists who come to teach the workers. I see few other companies emulating that example. But these are things which ought to have been enshrined in the labor code, and all the employers ought to have been forced to respect them. We have the Ministry of Labor, which is there. We have workers in the Ministry of Labor whose duty it is to see to it that these provisions are respected. But the law, the legal basis is not there. So I think instead of our people celebrating today, they ought to have been putting their heads together and contacting the various areas of our society where decision making can be challenged, can be made possible. You contact the political parties, contact the parliamentarians, bring forward their proposals. If you cannot contact anybody, put it in the press, and they can pick it from there. But unfortunately, we are not seeing any of that, and it's really unfortunate. I think that something has to be done. People have to be made to understand that it is in their own interest that they speak up, tell the world what you are going through, so that solutions can be put forth to better your situation.
Mr. President Tata Mbinglo, you have observed Cameroonians celebrate this day severally. When you look at how this day has been celebrated, how does that work in favor of engaging employers to make the working conditions better for workers?
Well, Mr. Leo, I think Cameroonians have the culture of celebrating. We celebrate everything, be it good or bad, which I think is not too bad. That's why we even give more priority to dead celebrations than bed celebrations. But that notwithstanding, I think Labor Day is an international day set aside for workers, and different people have different ways of interpreting this day. What I understand is it's a day a company meets, sits with its employees, look into the challenges they faced, and appreciate those who have worked distinctively within the year. So it is good to celebrate Labor Day, but in reality, are the laborers happy celebrating this day? I think that is the big question. And with the Cameroonian context, I can blatantly say they are not happy. We know workers do not live in isolation. We know their working conditions. We know working conditions of laborers in Cameroon. At some point, I'm tempted to think that the private sector offers better working conditions than even the government. This is a reality. Reason why some of us went out, we've stayed abroad, came back to this country, and we cannot pick up a job in this country because the working conditions here will not even give you an interest to think that you can work in your own home country. So these are issues that we should take into consideration, especially those of us who are seeking to change the country. First, we must give priority to our workers, protect them. The barrister rightly, Senior Barrister Ashu said it should be enshrined in the labor code. These things are important. What are the working conditions of Cameroonians? What are their advantages? So if we do not spell out these things, we keep overusing Cameroonians and even paying them little or nothing, because when I look at the salary conditions of Cameroonians, I say those are just allowances. I think no Cameroonian actually earns a salary to sit and boast that you earn a salary in this country. Just a few we can actually say this is a salary. Reason why I cannot pick up a job in Cameroon is certain, it's clear. I made it very clear. There is no job in Cameroon that pleases me or meets up with my expectations. So I can imagine how many Cameroonians are going through this. It's already a psychological problem. But how do we resolve this? That is a big question. And the greatest institution to shoulder this responsibility remains the government. Government here, I do not only refer to the president and his cabinet. I think politicians are part of the government. They are policy makers, non-governmental organizations. They should come together and see how they can improve on the working conditions of laborers in Cameroon. This is very, very important. Very important.
But the workers themselves, almost everybody is concerned for the conditions of work for the workers. But those who actually come out to celebrate, drink, and even get drunk, and are the workers, are they unconscious of the fact that this day should have been used to impose or engage employers for better working conditions? Instead of engaging, it is more of just a simple celebration, because last year there was a theme for its celebration. This year there's a theme. If we were even to ask the workers what the theme of this year actually is, nobody will tell you, but they are celebrating. What are we celebrating?
To me, this celebration comes as a means of, am I going to use the word frustration? Because they are not actually happy with the working condition they faced.
They are forced to celebrate.
It's an international event, so I think like every country obeys international laws, like events when it comes to Labor Day and Women Day and that. So to me, I think a lot has to be done, because like Senior Barrister said, I think it is time for us to empower the youth and encourage the youth to even actually go out and get the electoral cards, so because we need to change the system. First, I'm a militant of CPDM, and I would like to make the management of our parties and which are the ruling regime, because a lot has to be done, because Cameroonians are not happy about what's actually going on. You look at the minimum wage. What can 40,000 or 50,000 do to you? You have social things to go about, family to cater for, and that money cannot sustain you. When you look at the scientific method of recruiting in this country, it has not been respected. Why do I talk about the scientific method of recruiting? That is like Mr. Tata said, like rightly said, we have the mechanism to go about when recruiting, because based on experience, based on your knowledge, but all this has been bypassed, and people are being employed based on favoritism, tribalism. So I'm a citizen militant. I'm not scared to say that my party has to work a lot, because Cameroonians are not actually happy about what's going on in the country.
Okay, Cameroonians are not happy. If they are not happy, have they come up to you to complain? You yourself, you are a worker. Yes, but what should be done on this like this?
Well, Mr. Alio, thanks very much.
Should we also consider like that MPs may say our hands are tied? Are the hands of workers tied to celebrate this day the way it has been done for decades today?
I want to first of all recall that the International Labour Day was instituted in Paris, France in 1793. And this was as a result of 200,000 workers manifesting across the globe for a minimum of 8 working hours per day, which before this time, a lot of workers were suffering in different sectors and industries, including the public sector, because before this time, most of the affairs of the state were either managed by the papacy or as a blend between the papacy and the state. So the Industrial Revolution, Agrarian Revolution, and this period exploited a lot of workers, and in the history of human evolution, this day came to be instituted when workers across the globe came to say, hey, it's time for us to think of establishing a generally accepted rule, which could be like a right to all those working under an organization or under an individual as a worker. And who is a worker? A worker is someone who is supposed to have an established contract. This contract can be written or oral between the person who is working, who is an employee as we always call, and the other person who is employing, who is the employer. And the employer could be the state, the employer could be a private sector, the employer could be an individual. Now, is it worth celebrating, or why the celebration? I think the word celebration should vary from context to context and from country to country. Workers in Berlin, Germany, for example, should be proud to celebrate International Labour Day because they have obtained, a certain degree of good working condition, looking at where they work, looking at the number of working hours, looking at their salary, looking at their relationship with their companies and with their state. But now, in the context of countries where workers are uncomfortable by the experiences we can all observe for the context of Cameroon, there is no need for celebration. Or why should you celebrate? Are you celebrating your own marginalization? Are you celebrating your own bad working conditions? Or are you celebrating because you have abandoned everything to your employee or to your employer? I beg your pardon. And in Cameroon, we will observe that the greatest employer in this country is the state. It is the public sector, because Cameroon is, unlike many other countries around the world, is operating in a pro-public sector economy. A public sector economy is one that the government employs majority of the people, either through concours, as we can see in the country, or through state corporations, corporations that are managed by the state and private individuals. So in our context, we will say the person who is the highest employer, the government, have a lot of responsibilities to live up to, or they are not even living up to their responsibility at all. When we look at the 1992 labor code in Cameroon and all the provisions of this code that is talking about social security, employment security, employees' working condition, and even the forbidden aspects of women and children working at night, overnight, and all these things. Today, Mr. Leo, all of us can testify when you look at Yaoundé, Douala, Limbe, Kribi, Marwa, at night and at day, to say that it is not working. Workers are exploited, they are working overnight. There is no check by the International Labour Organization, which Cameroon has ratified all its conventions and provisions, which is providing for the protection of the rights of these workers. So it comes back to us to question our Minister of Work and Employment in Cameroon, who is the one that is supposed to guarantee the protection of the rights of these workers, who is the one to try to make sure that the rules and regulations established in the Cameroon Labour Code is being respected in its implementation, be it in the private sector or the public sector. I will shock you, Mr. Leo. 5 years ago, I used to teach in secondary schools in Yaoundé, and during this period, I was surprised that many schools operate in a very clandestine manner. Secondary schools in this country, where each school has its own kind of working contract, and then the amount of money that is paid to teachers depend on the teachers' bargaining power. The labor code is completely relegated to the background. What they call national insurance, which is supposed to be compulsory for all public and private sector workers, which is even the basic thing that a private sector worker needs, it is not even respected by majority of these employers. But now, since the system is so capitalist to the extent that money prevails over social justice, money prevails over employment contracts of the employee who are weak, who do not have the financial stamina to fight these employees. It established now this gap of conflict that exists between the employees in Cameroon and the employers. And like I said before, the first employer in Cameroon is the state, because our state absorbs many Cameroonians more than any other, because the private sector do not even have the capacity to absorb. So be it the private sector or the public sector, the conditions of workers is really poor, and the state is to be blamed for it. I'm glad my brother acknowledged that the CPDM has failed.
Yeah, but he's not talking here on behalf of. Yes, he's not talking here on behalf of the CPDM. He was not commissioned to come in. Now, let me get to you, Ndiwum Emmanuel. Year in, year out, we find workers celebrating. We find trade union representatives and presidents reading out speeches. And for the past 20 years, do you have the impression that there is any reason why we have been celebrating this day for so many years with all these speeches that are being made? Of what essence?
No, like Fabrice Leonard rightly put it, I think the celebration should be put in context from country to country and maybe even individuals. Because first of all, being a Cameroonian gives me every reason to say that nothing should be celebrated. That's the first thing. I should be a fact. I don't know, when we say that people are coming out to celebrate, like I asked, I don't understand what people should be celebrating on such a day like this, because the frustration that Cameroonians are going through should be above what can cause them to go out celebrating anything on a Labor Day. You need to understand that we are talking about a country that has a formal and informal sector. In a country that respects both the formal and the informal sector, the government regulating board is very active. But I want to tell you, without exaggeration, that of Cameroon does not even exist. Because the first person who tells Cameroonians that your situation is very good is the Minister of the Labor and Social Security. We are all witnesses to the fact that during the head of state end of speech, as usual, he made mention of the fact that salaries were going to be increased by, I don't know whether it was by 2 point and 5 point something, depending on the different categories. And you saw people instead sacked because people expected something more than that. We equally recall when the Minister of Social Security came out in this country and said 36,000 francs was an amount enough for a Cameroonian to actually sustain his family. That it gives you, it paints the picture of a government that has failed in almost every direction. Because the first thing, when you are in a country that you don't take into consideration the working conditions of your citizens, you are pushing your citizens through extreme directions. And you will discover that all of these put together will begin to push people to political tensions, social tensions, economic tensions. We live in an economy where every day prices are skyrocketing. And that is where I'm not very happy with Cameroonians. We saw how the mobile money tax came. It was time for them to call the government to order. They didn't. We saw how they tested us with the shortage of petrol. The people did not question the government. They went on, and finally they told us that from 36,000 or 37,000 in the informal sector and 5% in the formal sector was an increase. Yet the government did not tell us that those who are working with the government are very sure that in their banks, when they will go for month end, they will have such an increase. They did not tell us which mechanism they were going to put in place to make sure that that woman who offers domestic services as a house girl in somebody's house, will her right be respected? Because I think Senior Barrister is there, he will correct me if I go wrong. I think the law is also put in place to protect domestic workers, yet it remains in paper. Since we are in a country where our head of state has made it in such a way that we celebrate only slogan and speeches and nothing is ever done practically. Cameroonians find themselves where they are today. Let me just take you one sector in this country. The sector that every country in the world has to take it so serious, which is the educational sector. You will bear with me that the government has actually resigned from her role in controlling these schools. You have private schools where the proprietor determines the salary. 40,000 in Douala, 45,000, even 25,000 in some schools. Then the government is very quiet. These schools equally are having subventions from the state, yet the state is not protecting those people who are working there. And some schools even go as far as paying teachers 9 months, Mr. Leo, which means that once a teacher starts working in September, he is very sure that his last salary is in May, which is a very sad thing. And when you look at the population and the kind of, I have 3 children. Can you imagine that with our hard economy and people managing like us, you have to pay one child's school fee 150,000 francs, 3 of them, that's already 450,000 francs. But your child's teacher, the salary is 50,000 francs for 9 months. Where is this money going to? Is it not time for us, for everybody? Like my brother said that he is of the CBDM. I don't know whether he's fully or he's still on internship in that party, but I'm thinking that it is time for us to rise up and tell this government needs to sit up. They need to know that Cameroonians have come of age. This manipulation for so long a time has been going so successful because Cameroonians have remained so loyal to an unpatriotic leadership. If not, if Cameroonians were looking at the government in the face and telling them the truth, at one point they would have been ashamed. Because all of this is not because there's no money in Cameroon. There's money in Cameroon. But since embezzlement in the CBDM government is like petrol in the car tank that must force us to move, that is where we find ourselves where we are today. Because there is money. If the government was honest enough and active, because our government is one of the most inactive government that I see in the world as of now. I think our government, if they were active, they would have been able to reconcile the salaries of the informal sector, the formal sector, and regulate so that the proprietors or any state or any private employer is not the one who determines what he pays.
Okay. Now, Senior Barrister Ashu, Emmanuel, I want us to look at the role of syndicates or trade unions. They have been existing for so many years, and their essence is to look into the conditions of work of the workers in the different sectors. Now, the conditions of work seemingly are not getting better, yet these trade unions have been existing for so many years. What actually are they doing? And they're the ones who they're elected to represent the workers at the level of corporations.
Yeah, Mr. Kum, let me take exception to what I just heard, because it is not true that our government is most inactive. It's not true. I want to let us restate the true situation. You see, we have the Ministry of Labor and Social Insurance, which is implanted throughout the country. Now, it is true that employers of the private sector in the education subsystem, they pay very low salaries. But you see, are the labor inspectors aware? So if you, a worker who is being maltreated by your employer, you don't raise a finger to inform the labor inspector that this is what is happening. I mean, the labor inspector is not he is not a soothsayer. He is not a fortune teller to know that in a blue, black, green primary school, the teachers are being paid 25,000. No, the workers have to help themselves by reporting their predicament to the administration. No, let's not just blame the government for not. These institutions are there. The labor office is there. If you report the situation you are going through to the labor office, I am very sure they are not going to cross their hands and watch. Now, there is another situation that we also notice, the inhumane treatment of workers. We have foreign employers who manhandle their workers. Mr. Ndiwum just talked about domestic workers. There are many people who manhandle their domestic workers. It is not because somebody is working for you that you have the right to beat the person, to beat him up, him or her up. No, truly. You see, these are situations that ought to be reported.
Yeah. They
ought to be reported.
They say charity begins at home. If you cannot take care of someone working under you, why do you think government has to
That's right.
instruct you on what to do?
That's right. You see, the workers who are victims of this situation have to report this maltreatment to the government. If you don't report, the labor officer, it's not a witch doctor, please report to them, and if they don't do anything, then they can be brought to book. But I don't know of any single case that has been reported to the labor office and nothing has been done. I don't know of that. I don't know of that. The labor office, the labor officers, no matter where they are, if you report a case, they will call the employer. The result of the summon is a different thing, but they will call the employer up, and after the investigation, well, a report will be drawn. But start by reporting. If you report and it is correct. Now look, there is also this case of social insurance, social welfare. Many workers are not registered with social welfare. Please, the workers should know that it is their right. Go to social welfare and declare it yourself. Tell them that you are a worker with this company. You will see how they will send a team there to go make sure that you are registered. I mean, look, it is something that should start from the worker. Social welfare, like I was saying, it's not a witch doctor. They cannot know that in this company there are this number of workers. If the employer doesn't declare, you the worker, go to social welfare and tell them. You see, these are cases that we have to bring today.
They could be sacked.
Please, so no worker should be afraid of reporting. Please, excuse me.
Most employers, just 1 second, Senior Barrister.
Nobody should be.
Employers prefer to take that money, go and buy over justice than to pay some of these already frustrated. No, we should be real. We should be real.
Please, you are putting fear into people's minds for nothing.
No, it's not.
No, it's not fear. It's
Please,
it's a reality.
It's a system.
It's a
please,
system.
I am saying that any employer who is reported to the labor, that report cannot constitute a ground of dismissal. It cannot. I'm a lawyer, I know what I'm talking about. You cannot dismiss somebody because he has reported you to labor. No way. No way. The complaint should concern his misconduct, his conduct inside the company, not the fact that he has taken you to labor for his rights to be respected. So workers should not be intimidated to think that if they report a situation to the labor office, they are going to be dismissed. That is not true. I have a case of an accounting firm in Bonanjo. They were being underpaid. They came to me. I took them to the labor office. It's a white. The labor officer, the regional director called the regional delegate, called this white man who came and said, okay, I agree. I agree with what you are saying. He called his workers. All right, I am giving you the option. Either you accept what I am giving you, or I pay you the salary that you are claiming, and then I don't have money to continue paying. You are dismissed. They said, the labor officer told him, say, no, you cannot dismiss them because of what they are asking. It is their right. If you don't want to pay, we shall send it to court, and the court will tell you. And they had to come to a compromise. You cannot dismiss somebody because of his right. No way. So now you are talking about the syndicate. The syndicates, this is a job that the syndicates ought to do. But when we look at it, most of the syndicates tend to work in favor of the employers instead of being the workers' representatives or the people who collect the grievances of the workers and table them. They tend instead to team up with the employers. Like my friend was talking about the corruption. That is where it works. Employers corrupt the syndicalists, and they call it syndicates, and there is no action put on the table, because normally, like I was saying, in those companies where workers are manhandled, the syndicates ought to come up. They ought to come up and declare it and make sure that, because they have the right even to go to court. They have the right. What do? We don't see them. We don't see them. So let the workers, if the syndicates are dormant, report their predicament to the labor office, and I know that if nothing is done there, lawyers will pick it up, political parties will pick it up, and something will be done.
Okay, they are going to picking it up. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I'm a keen listener to your programs, but the sound quality today is not the best. Like, can you look into that? What is happening? The topic is quite interesting. Pierre is writing from Boya. Good evening to you, Pierre. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Why is Labor Day celebrated only at the level of the division? Why not at the level of the subdivision? Thank you. Pascal is writing from Loom. Good evening to you, Pascal. Good evening and happy Labor Day, Mr. Liu and panelists. Gray Anthony too is writing from Bafusam. Good evening to you, Anthony, brother. Good evening, Mr. Liu. In Gabon, primary school teachers have a salary of 600,000 francs a month, and a house girl is being paid for 120,000 francs to 150,000 francs. Daniel is writing from Libreville. Good evening, Mr. Liu, and greetings to all the panelists in the studio, especially Mr. Tata and Fabrice Lena. I'm an employer and CEO of the Dove Bilingual Complex, Suza, and co-founder and now managing director of Tita's Agro Foundation, Cameroon. I wish to let your panelists know exactly reason for Labor Day celebration and stop blaming the government instead of blaming the syndicates, president and workers of an enterprise. In Cameroon, Labor Day is a time for parades, labor rallies, organized protests, public speech making, and an abundance of TV and radio broadcasts focused on the meaning of the day. There are also marches where long lines of people walk and on ceremonial grounds and passed by government and labor union leaders. Businesses are keen to get their own banners, t-shirts and logos carried by the marchers and out in front of reporters' cameras during these events. I wish to ask the panelists criticizing the government if they saw anyone protesting against his or her employer today. We have basic salary put in place by the government, but if you decide to negotiate your salary lesser than what has been put in place, should be an individual problem, not that of the government. Tita Inuhu, watching from Suza. Good evening to you, Mr. Tita. Hello, Mr. Liu. It's always a pleasure watching the program. It is very embarrassing that the church is part of the enslavement of workers in the private sector. The authorities of labor and social security are aware of the employers who have not paid dues of their employees, yet nothing is done. We need a third republic fast. Elvis Mbinka is writing from Bamenda. Good evening, Mr. Liu, and happy Labor Day to you all in the studio. I'm responding to what Mr. Ashu just said. In most cases, the laborers are scared to report to the labor office because they might end up being mistreated or fired from work. Also, the government bears the responsibility to put in place mechanisms to protect the rights of workers. This is Bless writing from Yaoundé. But the syndicates themselves and these labor inspectors, why are they not doing their job to the satisfaction of the workers? Or it's also the fact that to some extent, maybe the guys working for labor would want to consider the economic situation under which some companies are existing. I would not want to mount excessive pressure on them for fear that they may go out of a business and finally many more persons get unpaid. If not, what is stopping them from exerting pressure? Because I know of many cases where labor inspectors have been engaged to look into problems, but it takes so much time for things to be fixed.
Yeah, Mr. Liu. Unfortunately, the country in which we find ourselves is a country where corruption is the order of the day. When leaders are being selected, when associations meet and vote their leaders, they cannot bite more than they can chew. So most of these leaders who are elected are toothless bulldogs because, to be honest, they find themselves in a system where they barely can survive themselves, not to talk of fighting for others. What are the parameters put in place for them to effectively defend their associations? They don't have. So it's just like satisfying the people that we have an association that can fight for our rights, but the parameters are not in place for them to use to fight for these rights. Who do they complain to? Who do they report to? Most of these offices are government offices. Whatever is put in place, whatever is put at the disposal of the management is what they work on. At the end of the day, sometimes you are told to either go to court or you forget about it. I mean, by some of these officials, especially those of the labor office, how do they defend the rights of workers? That is the first question. What are the parameters in place, put in place for them to effectively defend the rights of workers? It is not there. So you don't blame someone who doesn't have weapons to fight, and you are expecting him to win a war.
When you say there are no parameters, what is the role of a labor inspector? If he has no power, why is he being paid?
All right, that's good. Senior Barrister just said here that most of those inspectors do not know about the challenges of the workers. So I think the problem begins with them. Because when you are put in place to cater after people, you go to the field. If I am a labor inspector, I have days that I go out to inspect how my laborers are faring in their respective companies. I listen to them, I get their worries, then I talk to the management of those establishments. If they are not treating workers well, if they are not respecting the terms of their contract, you call them to order. Why are you paying these people lesser than what's on their contract? You don't only sit in the comfort zone of your offices to wait for people to come and complain to you before you take action. That's why you are put in the office in the first place. So I think we have administrative lapses in this country. It is nothing new. Why? Because most of our administrators have expired already. We know. More than 60 years, unproductive. We keep them in office until the day maybe they are taken to the mortuary.
Yeah, but let's take a classic case here. If the labor inspectors may not be doing the job, take the number of universities, private universities created across Cameroon. Take the number of private secondary education schools existing across Cameroon. They are in their thousands. And then take private enterprises operating in Cameroon. There are so many of them. If the government leadership has failed, as responsible citizens, what stops you from taking good care of those working for you at the level of the private sector?
Yes, at the level of the private sector, I think those syndicates have the responsibility to come in for the interests of the staff. But now, consider a situation where the leader of a labor syndicate is employed by a private university. Now, there were more than 500 applicants and he was chosen. So he already knows that he's in a critical condition, maintaining his job.
Yeah, but
so he cannot bite the finger that is. The truth is
in Cameroon. We have thousands of enterprises.
The truth is in Cameroon, we keep workers under conditions that they will have little or no choices. That is the truth. Yes, because it's either you take what we are giving you or you give the space to the next. So they all are aware that crying out loud is a big risk to my own job and my family. So we rather sit as we are and manage the little we have to sustain our families. That's a condition Cameroonians have been put under. It is a reality.
Okay. Greetings, Mr. Liu. I'm a worker in the private sector in a teaching field. Working conditions here is bad. We are treated as trash. I remembered one of my colleagues went to our founder for salary increase. The founder shouted, insulted him, and said, if you continue, I will sack you and employ someone who will even take lesser than what I'm paying you. With the situation of our country, which is difficulties of finding a job, the guy has to concord with him, the founder. Last year, Labor Day, we asked this very founder to do something for us. He asked us if we are laborers. We are really suffering. Okay, this is a private sector. This is somebody who is a typical. Is it okay? We have. Let us assume that we have a bad government. Government is not doing its job. As an individual, you are subjecting workers to what he is saying. Is it that there is a transfusion of bad governance from government to private individuals, especially in the private schools?
Yes, Mr. Liu. I want to answer this question because in a country where unemployment rate is as high as it is in Cameroon, it's but normal that few private sector business owners behave like the government. Because these same private sector owners can only defend the continuity of their income and budget by aligning with the party in power. Directly or indirectly, politics comes to play. Majority of our economic operators in this country are not politically independent. Now, since they are not politically independent, it affects the number of employees, because when employees come up with problems, revendications, they know that they already secure the good favor of those in high offices in administration and in the government in power, and therefore the revendications of the workers is not going to go anywhere. The justice system have been hijacked. There is massive unemployment where the rejection of A, B is ready to receive that with a lesser amount. We are in a society where our value system have been broken. That is the problem, Mr. Leo. The value system have been broken because let's look at it this way. The country is not completely bad. There are some few guys who treat employees well. I think at the beginning of this program, my brother Mr. Kwawi made mention of a young guy who is in the entertainment sector. I got to also know recently this guy called Kankintus, you know. I try to observe him and the way he treats his workers, and I say, okay, personally from my own experience, and I say, okay, maybe this is someone who has human feelings for his workers. I'm looking at the aspect of social security, I'm looking at the aspect of health, you know, because many private sector workers don't care whether you go to the hospital and die. It's not their problem. They don't even have a contract that is establishing some kind of obligation between the person who is employing you and you, the employee, in such a way that if the person who is the employer fail in his own responsibility, you can take the person to court and obtain justice from that court. Where I wanted to disagree with a barrister at the point of not blaming government labor inspectors is at the point where these people are not ignorant of anything, dear senior barrister. They are not ignorant of anything. They are quite aware, because their function stipulate rules and regulations. Their function have duties and obligations, responsibilities that they are fully aware. But since our country is always thwarting things and bringing some kind of taunting insinuations to function the way they want to function, you get it? This is where we obtain a broken value society. The serious problem in Cameroon is values. We do not work on values, on principles, on self-esteem, on boundaries. These are the things that make human beings to treat other human beings like they are nobody. We become so capitalist to the extent where money defines everything. Money becomes the modus operandi of our operation. We don't more consider the homo sapien, the humanness of human being, you know, because when you are employing somebody with the mindset that this is first of all a human being, and perhaps it is just a privilege for you to have the capacity to employ this person, tables could turn around and that person too becomes the one to employ you tomorrow, you know. And in that kind of consideration, I think the contract will be fair enough. Okay. But when it is such a way that you are assuming the position of a boss, like you have secured your income with the government, you evade taxes, you know the party in power is protecting you. So in this light, which most economic operators and employees in the private sector operate, it makes them to go away with anything they do to employees.
Good evening, Mr. Liu and the barrister in the studio. If the state can deceive teachers, what more about private institutions and companies? Teachers were being deceived of automatic advancement plus areas, but up till date, most of those of the primary sectors are nowhere to be found. Mr. Lanjo Abdu is writing from Bansor. The corruption in Cameroon is so inherent in the citizens. No one respects the human rights of another. Most people think that once you have money, you are untouchable. You can even kill and go free. Good evening, Mr. Liu and the panelists. I really enjoyed the program and have learned a lot. Thanks so much and happy Labor Day to all in the studio. Atem Julius is writing from Kumba. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Prophet is writing from Cambe. Good evening to you, Prophet. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Please ask Barrister if their services will be free in case where employees who are underpaid complain to labor officers and the case extends to the court. We are talking about employees who are barely able to feed themselves, so barristers should not talk like it's all easy going to court. I think we should be realistic and stop preaching theory. Stephanie is writing from Boya. Yeah, you want to say something?
Yes.
Because it is...
Sorry, I know it is I just want to call our attention to something and ask us here, what happens in a situation like this? Now, I went to a shopping mall owned by the Chinese company here in Douala. I realized a Chinese man almost slapping the employer, who is a Cameroonian. The employee. I walked up to him and told him, this is violence. It is an abuse. And if you touch this employee, I will take over this case. He turned and looked at me, could not offer a word. I was very ready for him. Now I ask you, where is the place of the labor inspector in this? Because it is a blatant violation of human. And if you look critically, that Chinese man does not have a work permit. Maybe it's not even documented to freely do business in this country. So who do we blame in this case? It's an open question.
Okay, it's an open question. Workers are celebrating today. They will drink to stupor, they will eat, and they go back complaining. If the workers are actually helpless for fear that they could be sacked, they could be blacklisted by their employers, what is the civil society itself doing to push for better working conditions of workers in Cameroon?
I think one of the reasons why we need to push for what you just said, like a forum like this is already a means for that. And I also want to talk on what Senior Barrister said about some administrators not being aware of what's happening in the working sectors. They are quite aware, because I remember when I was a teacher in one private school there, in the Southwest, when the inspector of education usually come to school, he just moved directly to the principal office and get his envelope and go without even check, like what's happening, and he goes. And those are kind of things that we are not actually happy, because things are not actually respected. And what Mr. Fabrice talked about, legal contract should be written or orally. To me, I don't think any contract needs to be orally, because it could be violated. And we, for example, I live in a country, I come from a country like a developed country like Germany. Everything is being written and documented. I think there should be a procedure that should be set aside by the government, where if an employer needs to come out with their own personal contract, that has to be in guidelines of what the government has proposed. And we don't see that. Like my brother said, he doesn't know if I'm an internship, CPJ militant or that, and Fabrice said if I'm here to say the CPJ has betrayed or has frustrated Cameroon. No. Being a CPJ militant, it doesn't mean I'm not going to outline the wrongs of the CPGM. I'm here to clap for the CPGM for a job well done, and I'm equally here to tell them, my party, you guys need to do more, because the youth, and I'm also a youth. Don't you think I don't feel the heat which other Cameroonians are feeling? I also do feel that on me. Now, I also have to talk about the weak judiciary. I know the judiciary of the country is weak. So at one point, I'm like, the judiciary, the executive arm of this country has not failed us. I think the judiciary and the legislators, they have failed us because they have failed to check the executive department of this country. Because if they are well checked, things will be done properly. And I think the executive, the judiciary need to stand up, because I know people like Senior Barrister, they are doing their best to see how workers who are underpaid could be improved on their wages. And when we talk about, and I also think about the human resource department, I did something I've realized that in most companies or even in the educational sectors, you go to more private schools in Cameroon, you don't see a human resource management department. Yeah. I think in any institution where you have 15 workers and above, you're supposed to have a human resource management department, right, which takes care of the working condition of the employees. And this human resource department has to have, they need to, a lawyer needs to be part of them, because they need to understand the labor code of the country. Yeah. They need to understand the condition. I don't need to move on. Someone said my colleague went to the co-founder of the institute and he was insulted. I don't need to meet the founder of the school. I need to go to the human resource department and lay my complaint. And then, because they understand the labor code better than you and I. Sometimes we work, but we don't understand what the labor code is all about. But the human resource department, they know everything about the labor code of the country, and it is their duty to make sure that the increase of salary are done, the working condition are done, the safety and everything, because safety is also a department that has to be installed in every, most like the factory sector, that all these factory companies, Guinness, Bazaar, you have to have a safety department where when new employees come, the safety department welcomes them and give them the tips on safety, on how to go about. Is it safety jacket? Is it safety shoes? Is it safety handshoe and glove? I say handshoe. The German name is so that was it. So I think a lot has to be done, and employers has been empowered. Our employers have been empowered because there is no check. Because like the syndicate, you said this. Tata said the syndicate. They think about their belly, and sometimes they are scared to voice out what they are supposed to do, because they are afraid of being evacuated from the job. And by doing this, the employers are empowered. Yeah. And when they are empowered and they start creating a good relationship between the administrator and the employer, where it becomes very difficult for the employees to break through or to have their message pass through. And I think a lot has to be done. So as a civil military, I'm here to tell the party, which is the ruling party, that a lot has to be done, because I'm not here to clap for them on wrongs, but I'm here to tell them to clap for them. I know they have been doing quite an amazing job, and more needs to be done.
Okay, more needs to be done. Good evening, Mr. Liu. The topic is very interesting. Special greetings to Senior Barrister. I would like to ask the panelists whether it is better for a company to pay a worker high wages, make losses, and close down after some time, or for a company to pay the workers what they can afford, break even, or make small profits to remunerate investors. Honestly, our economic situation is not the best for many businesses. And Joby Emmanuel is writing from Bamenda, but is this also where we find ourselves? Where, okay, everybody assumes that working for a company, you have to be well paid, you have to this, without considering whether the company is even breaking even or making any profit. It's also a fix for investors. You are investing, you want your enterprise to survive, to sustain over years.
So we are talking to Cameroonians who are very learned people. I want to think that we cannot be fooling Cameroonians with this kind of psychology.
Okay.
When you are working for your boss, you know the capacity of your boss. Because just take for example, I just gave you an example here. You have 60 children in class.
Yeah, but
we're talking about a company.
That's for schools. For schools, you know that if a school has 1,000, you are guaranteed that the school fees are going to be paid. But generally speaking, it is difficult for companies in Cameroon to break even.
I think, Mr. Liu, I think...
No. He's there.
Mr. Liu, when you look at the living standards of most of the bosses, their children, their wives around, it tells you that they are using you. It's as simple as that. So when you are telling me that most companies cannot break even, I can agree with you, but to a very lesser extent. And at one point, that is where we also appreciate the workers, because what gives right to most of these bosses is the fact that they have tried it the first year, it has been successful. They have tried it up to the 10th year. They have been sustaining their companies. At one point, they look at those who want to rest up their heads to be a bit difficult. They slap, you go out. Have you also asked your question, when they keep sacking and recruiting, are they not breaking even? When they keep sacking and recruiting, where are they taking the money to pay the newly recruited?
Thank you.
No. But before I come back to that question, Mr. Liu, I had a worry with a senior barrister. I know he's a very learned barrister. Barrister, what I want to tell you is that the situation of workers in Cameroon taking their bosses to court is very complicated. I have a practical situation. Remember that taking people to court in Cameroon, first of all, I agree with my brother, the judiciary system is very slow. It is time consuming. And for a poor man taking the boss to the court because the boss refused to pay his 50,000 francs, the boss can play delay tactics for the next 2 years, and maybe the employee ends up not even having transport to transport himself to that court area again, and he gives up. He does not even have the resources to hire a lawyer. We are well aware of a recent scandal of the domestic servant of a CRTV journalist in this country. I have not called any name, Mr. Liu. Now, you saw how everybody cried in the country, but the lady is in prison today. It is not, the lady did not have any means to defend herself. We saw how Operation OTS came up, senior barrister. The government picked out those people who were at the forefront, silenced them, and then a warning just came from above. Any teacher who stands again and talks about honor to support, the hammer of the law will follow you. They all disappeared, and that is the strategy the government has been using to fragilize the syndicate. Because once they pick 1 or 2 people and they say, they seal their lips, they tell the people that no, we are trying, everything is in progress. We are trying to see how we can negotiate. Mr. Liu, my brother there raised a worry a while ago, which is similar to something I came across the other day. Cameroonian laws are very good, but the practice has made it very bad to those who are not very close to it. I also witnessed a case of a Chinese the other day disrespect my national policeman, and he almost generated to a fight by some of us who were watching. That they stop you tell the policeman to shift, to leave the area. And the policeman was so frustrated because the man was talking with a lot of confidence. To say, a Chinese in my country, and we had to intervene. Us standing there, warning the man. The man told us that if we joke, even plus this policeman, he has what it takes. Why? Because we have made our justice system to be a buying and selling sector. All of this, how do you tell me that that poor worker who is receiving 50,000 francs will have the courage to take his boss to court, knowing that the boss will prefer to carry the money, go and bribe up there to even send you to prison? It's possible in Cameroon. That's happened. And then because of this, it sends down fear to the others who decide to die in silence. So many Cameroonians are actually dying in silence, not because they don't know the law, but because they know that up there they will not be recognized. Okay. Except senior barrister by the end of this program will promise Cameroonians that his services will be free, so that when we have such a case, we run up to him. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Liu, and to all the panelists. The private sector is becoming something else. Happy Labor Day to all in the studio. This is writing from Kumba. Good evening, Mr. Liu, and to your cream of panelists. Happy Labor Day to you all in the studio. Elvis Brown is watching from Shell New Bell. Emil from Jotin says happy Labor Day, Elvis, and good evening. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu. And the ILO has International Labour Organization has set in place international labour standards aimed at protecting employees worldwide. Cameroon is a signatory to this, so your government knows all about this, but the system in place won't promote these values. Good evening, Mr. Liu and dear panelists. The topic is too interesting. I am a worker with CDC. We are having accrued unpaid salaries for over 28 months with CDC. Whenever we peacefully ask the employer to address this problem, some of us attempt terrorists who want to incite rebellion. How can we go about this? Dibu Frank writing from Tico. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I'm Franklin. I study medical laboratory science. When you go online, you see wonderful salaries, but we hear discouraging things like people with very high GPA don't have jobs, and the few who have work under very poor conditions. I can easily get infected. Okay, please don't be discouraged. Believe in yourself. You're going to make the difference. Good evening to you all in the studio, and happy Labor Day, Mr. Liu. With all due respect, the employers have no feelings and respect for the employees. Imagine someone who have been employed to mold blocks, and after molding the blocks, the contractor refuses to pay the employee's balance and even ask him to take the case to police, that nothing will happen to him. I'm Naftalin Kum, writing from Boya. Please, the forces really need to do something about this. Greetings. Let's not forget that all this is also as a result of too much tax asked by government, and let your partner speak the truth, not opposing others in order to support the government. Martisan is writing from Limbe. Good evening to you. Hello, Mr. Liu. Majority of this, our generation, has been nurtured by this regime. That is where this misbehavior is coming from. The trade unions can only do its work if you change the faces in Yaoundé. Max Begini from Dusseldorf in Germany. Senior Barrister, how, according to you, should this day be celebrated so that it works in the interest of the workers?
Thank you, Mr. Liu. Well, let me start by addressing some issues that were raised before you gave me the mic. I will start by saying it is not true that the judiciary has been hijacked. It's not true. In labor matters, the employees have a very peculiar provision that enables them to choose their own court. Now, if you were working in Douala and you have been dismissed, after you leave the labor office, you can go to any court anywhere in Cameroon and lodge your case, because the law permits you to seize the court of your new residence. So it is not true to say that the courts have been hijacked, because you, the employee, are the person to choose your court. Your Majesty say, I am carrying this man from Douala to Frukankan. He must follow you there. He will follow you there. That's what the law says. It's not true to say in labor matters the courts have been hijacked. That's not true. Now, let us look at the other example that Mr. Ndiwum took. We were talking about people who go to report. I mean, you have your labor matter, and you go to the labor office to go and report. Now, let us remind the public that in labor matters, you cannot seize the court directly. You must pass through the labor office, which has to conduct what is called an attempt at conciliation. And it's at the end of that attempt at conciliation that a report will be drawn, and that report is what seizes the court. So nobody can carry his employer to court directly. You must pass through the labor department, the labor office, which will draw up this report. Now, Mr. Liu, you are a witness. I was here with you one day when I told the people, I launched an operation. I said, I will defend freely the first 20 people who will bring me cases of IDPs who were being detained. You were here. All right. So it's not the first time I've been defending people free of charge. I don't want my colleagues to think that I am flouting the laws of the Bar Association. But as a politician, you see, you can seize Reform Party president and he will defend you free of charge. I've been doing it. If you are earning 25,000 francs, you come see a lawyer. You think the lawyer it is easier 25,000 that will feed him. See the lawyer and let him look at your case. They are human rights lawyers. They are political party lawyers.
They invest in the case, and
of course, that case can be used as an investment. Now, the people who think that if they come to Senior Barrister Ashu, he is going to charge high fees, I am very sorry to disappoint you. Bring me the cases and you see what will come out of them. Now, no employer can dismiss you because you have taken him to court, to the labor office. If you say you don't have time to go to the labor office, your lawyer will represent you. It is not compulsory for you to appear. Lodge your file a complaint. Your lawyer can represent you. And if at the end of the day, the matter is not settled, it will go to court where your presence is not necessary. So I don't see why people are making noise. File the complaint at the labor. The labor can listen to your lawyer in your lieu and place and conduct whatever thing he has to conduct. Your presence is not necessary. Your employer cannot frustrate the enterprise by saying that he's not giving you permission for you to go to labor. That cannot work. Your lawyer will represent you. So any person who thinks that he's suffering from any ill treatment, please don't die so in silence. Contact a lawyer who can help you by reporting this thing.
Okay.
He talked about Operation OTS. Mr. Leo, you see, we are talking about taking matters to the labor. These are people who, instead of going to labor, took to the streets. How can you bring that before a TV panel and talk about it? Please tell those their teachers who initiated OTS. Next time they should take the state to the court. The state is an employer. He can be taken to the court. They can be taken to the labor office. Did they go to labor office? No. That is the reason why police people were sent behind them to catch them and flog them, because they were disrespecting the law. You are bringing down a breakdown of law and order. Take the state to the court. The court is an employer. They will answer the case.
Okay, they'll answer the case. I don't know who clarified this. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I'm called Olete Peter from Tico, and I'm a worker with the Tico Banana Project, a cooperative credit union. I know I am out of topic. I want you people to help me. Today makes me 1 year that I took my 3 medals and my company did not pay me and medals, any medals bonuses. Please help me. When they give medals, they pay you?
I'm supposed to pay you.
Okay.
But the funny situation is that what we see is that people instead pay money to get the medals.
Yes.
But there's a labor medal bonus,
okay,
which is supposed to be paid.
Okay. That one also I'm learning for today. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I would rather work for Indians and Chinese than work in a company owned by a Cameroonian. They are the highest people who exploit employees. I have seen it firsthand. The salary they will offer for a senior level job is what these Asians offer for entry level. Most of their companies don't even declare CNPS, talk less of health insurance. We should start loving each other and stop blaming the government. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu, and happy Labor Day to you guys. A lovely topic, in fact, educative to Cameroonians. Good panelists on your platform. Nothing will change with same government strategies. Good evening to you. Stop calling, please. Just send a message and I will read them out. Good evening, Mr. Liu, and happy Labor Day to all of you in the studio. It's an interesting topic, please. Wish to know the time limit to be getting from pension. Issues are being raised. Government is a bad employer, not taking good care of its workers the way you guys are presenting here. The private sector also is not better from what you guys are presenting.
Can I just chip in something before you answer?
Okay.
Please, there's something which I think I should mention before I forget. These people who are working, these foreigners, who you find them managing companies, the labor code provides that for a foreigner to work in this country, his work contract must be visaed by the Minister of Labor. Yes, you see, so most of these Chinese, Indians, they don't have labor contracts. They don't have. So if you take them to the labor inspector, to the labor office, they will be kicked off their place. They will have to comply with the law. And if they cannot comply with the law, then they cannot work anymore. So it is important that this type of fellows be reported to the competent authorities.
Okay. Yes, I was talking about the fact that neither the government or the private sector treats workers the way they ought to. Is it our DNA not to take care of our workers? Because if government is not doing any better, we should have seen an example from the private sector. But when you read what is coming in, almost everybody is not taken care of in Cameroon.
Yes, you're right, Mr. Leo. Unfortunately, the number one caretaker of the state is the government.
Mm-hmm.
People rather copy from the government and not vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
So if we empower a government, we give them the full responsibility to run the state
Mm-hmm.
with all human values and functionalities. Now, when there are lapses within the arms of the government, there's bound to be lapses within the state. So if the government does not take full responsibility of its duties and govern with honesty, you don't expect an individual who belongs to that state to perform differently.
Okay.
I have a few cases of those who
You mean that you are a Cameroonian citizen. If you were to employ Cameroonians, you would treat them the way the Cameroonian government.
Yeah,
because
you just cut me short.
You,
I was coming. That is the second part. I was coming there, and you stopped me.
Mm-hmm.
Now I want to give you an example of a few Cameroonians I know are doing a good job when it comes to human resource management
mm-hmm.
and treatment of laborers. One of them I have observed very keenly is Honorable Ngala Gerard.
Mm-hmm.
He has a company, Jerry Sar. That company cuts across the nation. I have seen and listened to a host of his employees and testimonials. They are well treated, social insurance, health-wise. He does that. And he is also part of the government, remember, but he is different. There are others. He made mention here, we all know, one of us, Mr. Kanquintos of Lionsgate. When you go there and you see the way he treats his workers, maybe it's because he has the American system in him, but these are examples we appreciate and we expect others to emulate. But that notwithstanding, the number one protector of human rights, laborers in this country, I will continue to say it, that has all the instruments, all the parameters to put in place to ensure that laborers are well protected, is the government.
Mm-hmm.
We are all seats of the government. You cannot plant corn and you expect to harvest beans.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Good evening, sir. I love your program. I'm Pastor Mba Elvis. All this is because we are not having any fear of God in our country. All we have are opportunists in Cameroon. If you dare ask for an increase in salary, you will be fired. Most workers don't even know about social insurance. They are not sensitized on labor matters. Workers should be sensitized on their rights and obligations. That is why drivers change from one agency to another every day. Please, Mr. Leo, forward me senior barrister's number. Okay? Can you make that request after the program, please? Good evening, Mr. Liu. I'm a primary school teacher integrated since 2018. The government has not paid my arrears and advancement up to date, but the government keeps on saying it will come automatic to no avail. So no side is better, Mr. Liu. I pray that your debate will touch the hearts of those concerned. Augustine is writing from Buddha. Good evening to you, Augustine. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Ndiwum, I'm listening in Kribi. I'm from Kum. I'm a worker in Hibikam. Okay. Good evening to all of you guys watching us from famous Swiss and other areas across that area producing palm oil and rubber. Yes. How do we get, if PAP were to take part today, how differently would you celebrate this day?
Of course. PAP have a political project which we think puts the people first. The people first means that the working condition have to be improved. But this is not just declarations. It depends on the way you politically structure the country, because the political structure of a country determines how state public service delivery, state corporations, private enterprises are going to be organized, and how this will be incorporated to new laws that we will amend or we will all build together. The Popular Action Party looks at the Cameroon to be a country where, if we move towards a new system or form of government, which is federalism with voted governors without any appointed DO, SDO, who will be supervising activities of voted mayors, voted parliamentarians, voted state councillors.
Yeah, but we are talking about corporations here. We are not talking about
yes,
and SDOs.
Yes, Mr. Liu.
Governors now.
I understand you. There is, you ask that what will PAP do? I am telling you that.
But you are talking about federalism. Is that what?
There is a connection between the political organization of a state.
System of government, right?
Yes, there is a direct connection. Do you know why Cameroonians have poor working conditions? It is the way Cameroon is politically organized.
What is the economic policy of the
Do you think economic policy can work without political policy?
No.
It is embedded, Mr. Liu. You cannot talk about working condition without mentioning political organization.
Now the problem, sincerely speaking.
That's why I'm telling. That's why I'm trying to explain to you.
The problem is that you have 3 minutes to talk. We are talking about economic. If you have to go to federalism, you go to this before coming here.
Do you think that Cameroonians who are watching will understand me if I say that I want the best working condition for Cameroonians without them knowing how would this happen? You should allow me to learn to see if it makes sense or it doesn't make sense. Perhaps it makes sense to some viewers, because we of the PAP first of all think that the form of state influences the working condition of Cameroonians. If you are operating in a high presidential system where there is a president controlling everything, and even the way people sit on chair in their office is determined by the president, how will you tell me that let me just go and talk about the working condition of PAP? It is linked.
What you are saying here now is that, okay, once we have federalism, like you are saying, we have voted
mayors, governors that are autonomous,
and the economic policies are disastrous. Everything is going to work well.
It is going to automatically change the way things are going to function. Do you know why? Because federal system, first of all, federal system first of all insist on.
You have 5 minutes, but he's using his 5 minutes to talk other thing. Yeah.
The thing, if we are keeping interruption, we cannot make constructive contributions.
Because
federal system first of all. I get your point. I get your point. No, I must not say what you want to hear, Mr. Liu. I'm saying what maybe people want to hear.
I'm asking a question. I cannot ask a question and you are answering something else. Then there's no reason for this program. It means I'll ask him a question. He says what he wants.
No. It's not like I'm saying what I want.
There is a topic. We are all intellectuals here.
Of course, Mr. Liu. I'm into politics. I'm not expert of. I'm into politics. We cannot say that Cameroon will function without politics. If Cameroonians are having bad working conditions, it's because the party in power, its political structure, and the way they have organized workers in Cameroon is poor. That's the result. It is as simple as that.
Okay.
If PAP comes in power, it starts from the political policies. Once we put up our political policies, the rest, be it economic policy, be it social policy, be it agricultural policy, be it industrial organization, all these things will come in their full place.
Okay, let's look at what should be the focus of whoever drives the destiny of this nation to ensure that the conditions of the workers are taken care of.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Liu. I think Cameroonians are all disappointed about thinking about our president, the present president, the principal of our party, and everybody is looking up towards 2025, and yet we don't yet know the representative of the various parties. So I think whosoever emerges as a president of this country next in 2025 has a lot to do, because there's a lot I think a lot of policy needs to be reformed when it comes to labor and all this needs to be reformed. And because sometimes when I look at the situation of the labor sector of this country, I'm beginning to, when we sit in secondary school, and there was a topic where it taught us efficiency of labor. And what does efficiency of labor says? Efficiency of labor says, I think that the conditions put in place to give equality, to bring for laborers to bring out the best of themselves, and so that the output could be of good quality. And what are these factors of efficiency of labor? Maybe have the things that facilitate all these things. And sometimes I begin to think that all these factors that are placed aside or are put aside to give us a good output has become efficiency, not efficiency of labor anymore, but efficiency of laziness, because people now sit at the comfort of their office and are very reluctant to do what they are supposed to do, and it is not actually the best for this country to move forward. And also when I look at grants, someone talked about, there was a message someone said, what if in a situation where you are facing economy stagnant and break even, and you are unable to pay your workers? I think in a situation of grant, the government has to make the banking policy in a situation where medium or small
those are the economic policies I was asking about.
Yes, small or medium companies who have access to the banks and get loan to see how they could boost the economy. But to an extent, I think some very bad government officials, they've hijacked this money and then kept where there will be not accountability for it, and now
access to finance
and
very difficult.
Yeah. So and we also have civilian right. And one of the civilian rights which I've noticed that has been taken from us is the right to protect and the right to ask for better conditions. And now when you think we go out to protect, it becomes, because like I said, I'm not here to applaud for CPJ and say CPJ is doing the best. I'm here to applaud when it's necessary and to also tell them this has to change.
Okay.
Yeah, because and we also have employer conduct.
Okay.
Because sometimes we keep talking about employees' conditions, employee condition, without also making that they also owe the employers good conduct, because sometimes they become so lazy and things that, no, because I have been employed, I'll just be there, and at the end of the month, and I have my money being paid to my account, which is that it's not a good.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Good evening, Mr. Leo. Labor Day to you guys in the studio. I'm Paulinus in Yaoundé. One thing with Cameroon workers is that they work and know nothing about the labor code. I think the labor code should have been at least included in the curriculum of all professional schools in Cameroon. Yes, but these are the things that you guys should be doing, because workers don't even know their rights at the job site. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Leo. Happy Labor Day. I wish to find out Labor Day is international, but why is the 1st May not celebrated in the USA? I'm Gerard, writing from Douala. Good evening, Mr. Leo, and happy Labor Day. I wish to find out Labor Day is international, but why is 1st May not celebrated in the USA? Okay, that is the second person asking that same question. Mr. Leo, please, just to know that the number of years limited for pension, okay? Good evening, Mr. Leo. Please, there is confusion in the studio. Please, can there be order, okay? I don't know. Good evening, Mr. Leo. Happy Labor Day. Taking an example of most marché central workers, sellers, they do lack customer service. I do online sales, and when I order for something from them, immediately you send them the money. They do not see any other thing as important anymore. I hope they sit down and discuss on this issue. I think they should be educated and customer service. Okay, greetings to Honorable Tata. Okay. Honorable Angbonduku Eret, writing from Kumba, says, good evening, Mr. Leo. The gentleman arguing with you is not helping the program. One can talk about the economy without necessarily talking about the form of the state, because even communist governments also have an eye on the economy. Yes, how do we fix the conditions, the labor conditions of our country in the next 2-3 3, 4, 5 years?
I will share the responsibility of the fixing, Mr. Liu.
Okay.
I want to start from the employers. I want to think that employers, I am appealing to the consciences of the employers first. They should learn to give a listening ear to their employees. And then the employees, when you are hired to do a job somewhere, do it in such a way that it will even appeal, it will encourage your employer to be able to pay you and even be motivated enough. Because when they talk about motivation in economics, as you were saying, how motivation goes a long way to promote efficiency of labor, it equally means that you who is doing the work, when you do a job in a great way, it also motivates. You are here on my Media Prime. Of course, permit me to appreciate my Media Prime for what I've been doing. You will discover that the workers, I'm very close to them, but I've never heard a complaint, because you as the DG, maybe you have your own way. I don't know the magic that you use on them, that they're always there, they render their services, and when you pay them on time, maybe that's one of the factors why all your journalists are still in place. None of them is leaving. So I want to think that when you encourage your boss by doing the work the right way, the boss will also equally be encouraged to pay your salaries. Because like someone said here, laziness at job site at times can even cause you to be sacked. And at that time, you will not even be ashamed to go to the labor office because you have no backing. So when we are saying this thing, we should say them the way they are. Again, for those Cameroonians who think Labor Day is for celebration, I want to think it is a time of communion between the employer and the employees. Let them take this moment to dissect the problems affecting the sector for a better, output, labor output. Again, the state, we cannot fail to hold them, because after saying what we are saying, the state remains the key person. If the state cannot deploy those people they are paying as labor officers to be on the field, to find out, to even hold public seminars to educate some workers, because that's their job, that's their role, to awaken the reasoning of. We are talking, if you go to the field, discover that even those who are working, they don't have the same qualifications, and so they will not have the same reasoning. Those who are working with O levels, maybe who have migrated from Northwest and Southwest, they needed just somewhere to put their head. They are paid 50,000. They feel very comfortable. They will not go as far as revendicating for salary increase like the person who is a trained teacher, who is a technician in that domain. That said, there are some commissions in this country, Mr. Liu, that should be scraped up by the government. That money should be factored back into the salary of the state worker. I don't see what the Bilingualism Commission is working under the senators in this country, that they are pumping a lot of money into such structures without anything being delivered to the Cameroonians. So those structures should be scraped off and then factored into the sector where the civil servants can feel at ease to render their services to Cameroon.
Okay, we'll take one last intervention from you, Senior Barrister. You had something to say?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Liu. I wanted to answer the same question you've been asking us.
Okay.
What Reform Party would want to do to solve this problem that is plaguing the workers? The first thing is that Reform Party is going to put in place a new labor code. We don't want this situation where employers will have to give to workers a salary that they deem necessary. It's not correct. That old labor code should be brought back. That old one of 1974 should be brought back. That is a good labor code. It should be brought back.
Okay.
The second thing, you cannot ask the labor inspectorate to be in charge of supervising the companies and then conducting labor disputes. It's not possible. We are proposing that a business observatory be created.
Okay.
A business observatory be created. That should go, because you see what is happening in the Ministry of Education. You have delegates who are down there who are supposed to go to those private schools and make sure that the salaries are correct. They go and instead take packages and forget everything. You look at the result. So if you have a business observatory whose business it is to go down to all those places, those schools, and make sure that everybody complies with the law. Nobody will flout it. Then the third one is we have to make sure that effectively every worker receives the salaries he deserves.
Okay.
And how are we going to do that? Every business organization must have only one account. And inside that account, you have to have sub-accounts for all of your workers. And the banks will be given the permission to credit the accounts of these workers at the certain date of the month. Automatically. They credit those accounts. Whether you have put money there, they will credit the account. Like especially the schools. When subventions come, we shall offset the balance. Because the state does give subvention. These people use the subvention to go build their houses in their houses in big towns and collect rent. That is not our business. We want that workers should effectively receive their salary. So we want to make sure that the workers will actually receive the money. That the inspectors will be there. The people who are supposed to be there to see to it that the companies comply with the law are there. The business observatory. We want to put it in place so that you will not say they have gone to bribe labor inspection. You should come and close this. I know, sir. The business observatory will come and say, "This your workers are supposed to receive this salary. Give us a list. Give us a list of workers. How much is each one receiving? Talk to the workers themselves and make sure that what you have in place complies with the law.
Okay.
That way, these workers are not going to be complaining anymore."
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Please, this pension delay and ignorance of employees with regards to the labor code is very serious matter. Can you, in one of your programs, handle it for us? Please, Tiku Felix is writing from Boya. Good evening to you, Tiku Felix. Prime topic of discussion proposals. Okay. I would love to be part of the programs if you will approve it. Okay. Can you just indicate if you want to be part of our discussions, and I'll add it to our forum and we can discuss. Good evening, Mr. Liu and the team. This is Mr. Fozo from Bamenda. According to the topic of discussion today, I would like to say that I blame Cameroonians who do not know anything about labor law, and they are the working class. A time will come when every citizen of Cameroon will know that they all have to get a lawyer or register in a law firm to guide them in every step of the way and other things in life. Politically, the country state has made life so hard that people get to work just to eat and are willing to submit to every maltreatment from employers. I will equally like to have the contact of Senior Barrister. Okay, write to me after this program. We want to thank you, Senior Barrister, for coming.
You're welcome, Mr. Liu. Let me take this opportunity to express my heartfelt condolence to the family of Mr. Dipita Ebonge, who was our regional president for Littoral. He died last week.
Okay, and also to you, Tata, for coming.
Yes, Mr. Liu, always a great pleasure. As I said earlier, special greetings to Mr. Tata Inuhu, the CEO of Tata Agro Foundation. Happy Labor Day.
Fabrice, thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Liu. I want to thank the militants of the Popular Action Party nationwide, especially those in Maroua, to say that à l'Ekijam, nous sommes ensemble et l'avenir, c'est la jeunesse. Donc, merci beaucoup à toutes les jeunes qui nous soutiennent du côté de Grand Nord. Nous sommes ensemble. Et coalition Grand Nord, PAP, c'est victoire 2025. Merci.
Okay, thank you too for coming. Nana?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Liu. I'm happy for sharing your platform with me, and so we could argue on this very important topic to see how we could move forward our country, and also to tell Cameroonian, young Cameroonians, that it is time for them to go get their PVC, their electoral card, so we could together give a stiff competition to the ruling party and see how we could better things for all of us, and not leaving the university students, because you can do this without complaining every year of this and that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ndiwum, thank you too for coming.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Liu. It's always a pleasure. To every worker, wherever you are called up for your services, do your best to be recognized. Don't only look for the salary.
Okay, we also want to thank you all who took time off to watch this edition of the program. To all the workers, we pray that by the time we celebrate next year, the conditions of work would have been made better at all the levels. And to you, Eli and Desmond, we say thank you for production. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.